This is the first small group discussion with J. Krishnamurti in London, 1967.
What shall we talk about? We'll talk over together.
Sir, the other day you said that to follow anybody psychologically is an unintelligent thing to do. But you could follow somebody in a technical sense. And there seem to be some borderline methods. For instance, Hatha Yoga, which could almost be psychological and also technical. I'm not very clear where I was making differentiation.
So do you know anything about yoga?
Very little.
You know, it's a very ancient system, from what I've been able to gather from specialists, that it began originally by a group of people in ancient India who wanted to keep their minds, and therefore their bodies, very clear, precise and active. And they, from what I've been told, they found a leaf in the Himalayas which they chewed. And as the leaf gave out, that was many, many centuries ago, probably 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, they had to invent a system to keep their minds and their bodies extraordinarily alert. And there were the rulers, the prime ministers, and the whole gang, the established order. And so they invented this system of yoga, which is to keep the glands highly sensitive and active. And so you have to practice it every day, standing on the head and so on, various forms of yoga. And from that, they evolved a scheme of trying to control the mind, meditate, and all that began. I think originally, as far as I understood, it meant to keep the body and the mind very healthy. And later on, the professionals joined in to make it more complex, and out of that they brought about meditation and all that. So, if one follows yoga in the purely physical sense of that word, which we do, I do it for an hour and a half every day, you must be taught properly. You can't learn from a book. And it all depends if the teacher is really knows what he's talking about. And then you have to learn like any other technical thing.
Can I just go on a little further then?
Yes, please, sir.
If the body is healthy, for instance, breathing and emotions are tied up, but you can perhaps change your breathing changes with your emotional state. Therefore, you can perhaps change your emotional state through your breathing. It seems to me that there are methods about in the world like that, where it comes very close to a psychological change. And is it possible to use these methods in such a way that you're not psychologically a disciple of the teacher, and and yet still use methods?
So, I mean, one can observe if you breathe, which is called in India pranayama. It's a very, very complex process. You can't just do it on your own. It has to be taught very carefully. Obviously, the metabolism of the system undergoes a change, and therefore the breathing quietens the whole process of thinking and so on. But you can quieten the mind and breath through breathing, but you can still be a crooked man. You follow? I mean, a psychotic you can still be, and yet breathe very carefully and do all the regular stuff. You can be terribly greedy.
I was going to ask a question about what you were discussing, or talking about it in Hall the other day, about watching the observer. And I thought, what is it, or who is it that watches the observer? Is that, what part of the brain is that? Is that not a subtle form of the observer?
It's really rather a complex question. Shall we go into it? Do you want to go into it all?
May I make one more statement about this?
Yes, sir. Yes,
You
sir.
know, I can't recall the exact terminology now, but I was reading about 7 or 8 years ago about the Hindu, the Vedic explanations, the Raja Yoga, and they actually gave a map or a diagram of the human brain, the different parts, the observing part, the part that stores up memory, and I wanted to look into that again after hearing this talk, because they had given such a clear diagram of the whole physical human brain and the different functions of it. And I was wondering if this was in some way connected with what you were saying about...
I'm afraid I don't know the various capacities of the brain, the various frontal lobes and all the rest of it. But to go into this question of the observer and the observed requires a great deal of penetration into it. Do you want to do all that now this morning?
Can I just say, do you think it would be an idea to close the windows a bit? I think there's a lot of noise outside. Is everybody hearing?
Whatever you would all agree, I don't care.
No, but
Let's begin with a very simple thing. What is watching, looking? There is the visual organism, the eye, that sees. And I watch the tree, the cloud, right? The seeing of the cloud. The mere seeing with the eye is very superficial, right? There is nothing much to it. So, further, then what is seeing? I see with my eye the tree. Is the seeing only that? just with the eye? Or the seeing implies much more? Now, what is the much more, the plus? Let's discuss it, otherwise...
Sometimes you could be looking at a tree, the physical eye is seeing the tree,
Yes.
but the mind is daydreaming about something else.
Therefore, what takes place? You are seeing the tree and your thoughts are somewhere else.
Yes.
Or you see the tree with your visual organism, but the memory, knowledge, thought interferes with it. It's like looking through a screen. Right? Shall we go step by step, otherwise? So, the looking through the screen is part of seeing, what we call seeing. That screen is not only botanical knowledge of that tree, but also in that screen is involved like and dislike. So, like and dislike and the knowledge interferes with the actual seeing not only of the tree, but the quality of real penetrating perception. I don't know. Can we proceed from there? Now, next thing is it possible to see with the eye and yet not let the whole process of mentation take place? Mentation being the thinking, the knowledge, the like and dislike, the various experiences that one has had with regard to that particular tree or tree generally. Is it possible to look without all that? And when you do look with the physical organ, then what takes place? I don't know if you...
When we look to the eye, there's always an element of recognition that's involved in it.
Of course.
And there comes in the memory.
Recognition implies memory, obviously.
And therefore...
That's included in that, sir, isn't it? There is the like and dislike. There is the screen through which I see, the eye sees. The screen is the memory, the experiences, the knowledge, the conditioning. All that is involved when we say the screen. The recognition that it is a tree, that it is the person I know, whom I like or dislike, who has insulted me or flattered me, who has given me this or given me that. So all that interferes. Or don't let's even call it interference, that's what we call seeing. But is that seeing? And who is it then that sees? Is it the screen that sees or only the eye that sees?
The screen?
No, sir, this isn't a matter of argumentation, you know. This is actually doing it. Wait, I see you. There is the visual perception with the eye, the rays and all the rest of it, the light. Then I say I recognize you because I met you yesterday or 10 years ago. Now, you said something to me which was not nice. So I like you or dislike you. I have the image of you. Right? The image which is of like and dislike, and that has taken root in my mind. And that image is looking at you. This whole process is what we call seeing.
Isn't this a protective mechanism?
It is a protective mechanism and a defensive and therefore offensive. It isn't just protective, it's both. When you defend, you are offending. It's like the nations say, no, we are building up an army for defensive process. I mean, that's
Quite
all.
honestly, if you look at a tree without memory, you don't know what this tree's going to do to you.
And no, tree can't do very much.
I think without knowing it, you're afraid of it.
No, but let us, you see, that's a little, that when we say the screen, in that is implied not only the process of recognition, but pleasure and like and dislike, and also in that is involved a sense of defensive mechanism, saying I mustn't get near him again because he's hurt me, or I must get near him because he was pleasant, which is both defensive and offensive. And also in that screen is involved various reactions, which we, if you wish, we can go into details of it. So all that is operating.
So when I'm looking at you now, I have no clear-cut image, but I know I'm not seeing you really as you are seeing me.
Yes.
But I have no clear-cut image of what I am looking at. I just know I'm not seeing it as it is.
You have no image of the person you are seeing.
No clear-cut image, nothing to say. This is the image.
This is, yes. But if I say to you, you're awfully nice, you have an image immediately. If I say, no, you are rather silly, there's an image. And if you keep on meeting me, and I keep on flattering you or insulting you, the image gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And presently that image will be seeing me. Of course.
Or rather, I'll be seeing the image, not you.
No, yes. There will be no you seeing the image. The image through you is looking, through your eyes. No, so that is what goes on. Now, what is wrong with that process? That's what we do every day of our life, in the office, in the family, and so on. What's wrong with it?
Isn't that the essence of why life becomes so terribly boring for people as they gradually get older?
Of
It's
course,
a repetitive
of course.
process.
But so you say that is rather a mechanical process, a rather boring thing, therefore it's tiresome.
Well, it's deadening. Isn't it?
Deadening.
Yeah.
But something more is involved in it, isn't there?
It's alive. It's distracting.
Huh?
It's alive.
People?
It is alive.
It isn't alive.
It is alive.
It is a lie.
It isn't real.
It isn't real. What isn't? What do you mean it's not real?
Well,
Or lie?
we're seeing the false.
No, but he has insulted me. You have flattered me.
Is
We act on that as if it's the truth, but actually it isn't the truth. Insofar that the screen we have called the truth, and
It's not the truth, sir. What actually has taken place, let's be simple, don't just call it the truth, the false. What has actually taken place? You have said something very pleasant to me, flattered me, that has taken root. Somebody else has insulted me, that has taken root. These two are facts.
Yeah. We're not concerned with the image, we're wanting to find out what is.
The images.
And no, what
If
we
we
are...
see the image, we can see ourselves developing the image.
First, let us see what actually takes place, then we can go beyond. I don't know, right, sir? First, see what takes place. This is actual process. Every reaction is registered. That creates an image. And through that image, I look at you. That's a fact. That's what actually is going on. I said to myself, what's wrong with it?
But I don't want to see life through that image, that's why.
Wait, sir, you may not want to see your life, but see,
Well, then,
let us,
like this.
yes, you want to break through it.
Right.
Right, we'll come to that in a minute. We'll come to that in a minute. So, what is essentially wrong with it is, these images are time binding. I don't know if do you want to go into all that? Because in the time binding is that I am living in the past. That you might have changed in the meantime. You might, when you have said to me you're a nice chap, but you might have changed your mind. You might think I'm a damn fool. So, you have changed, but my image about you hasn't changed. I'm still living in the past. Right? So, that is the real fundamental, what shall we say, issue that our whole life is a movement in the past or of the past. Huh?
Doesn't this have wide implications as far as the suffering that results from it, the misery, the frustration?
Of course,
It
of
goes
course,
out
of
like a
course, of
stone
course,
thrown
of
in
course.
water.
After all, you have an opinion of me or a judgment or evaluation of me, and that prevents you having any relationship with me. So you keep on insisting that I'm a fool, and I might not be a fool. So the battle is on between us. So, now the next question is it possible to disentangle oneself from this mechanism of creating images?
As I ask you one question before you proceed further. This living in the past may be troublesome, but in some cases it may be
Necessary.
necessary.
Of course it is.
For example, we have got a snake.
And wait a minute. A snake. Let's go slowly into that, because you see, one must. All right, sir. Let's go into it. You meet a snake. You are being told about a snake that is poisonous. You must be careful. You don't approach it, and so on, so on, so on. There is the image of danger, and so you avoid it. Now there is also the image of a precipice, and you avoid it. There is also the image of people who are violent. Violent in the sense they want to hurt you intentionally or unintentionally. They want to dominate you. They want to push you into doing this and that in various forms. If you can, you do avoid them. Unless you yourself are violent and you're...
But if you don't have a memory, you're going to be hurt over and over again, aren't you?
Beg pardon?
If you don't retain a memory, you're going to be open to
Of
being
course,
hurt
of course, of
every
course.
time.
So that's why one has to go into this very carefully, see, slowly, because you see, first of all, we are trying to understand what is the observer and the observed. That's what the question arose. Now we are trying to understand the observer, not the observed. Right? What is the observer? The observer is not only is that entity who knows the danger of a snake, the danger of a precipice, the danger of people who have said you are a damn fool all the time and insist that you are a fool, and also the danger of people who say you are an awfully nice chap and keep on repeating an awfully nice chap, and the danger of people who want to hurt you, and so on. And that's why I said like and dislike. In that two categories, all these are involved. Both security and freedom from security. All that is involved when we say the screen. I have to be terribly cautious of a man who says, who has been repeating year after year that I'm a fool, I'm aggressive, I'm a brutal. And I know I've looked at it very carefully the first time, or first 2-3 times, and I say I'm not that kind. But if you keep on saying I'm that, I want to avoid you. What's the point of our meeting? I can't change you, and you won't change me. So, when we say the screen, let's understand, we mean all that. Not leave out any, one hasn't to go into every detail, but that's clear. Now, I see the danger of having such a screen or such an image that my mind is always living in the past. Which is, you might have changed in the meantime, but my image keeps on repeating about you. You've gone away, perhaps gone away from the position you have taken, but I insist that you are still in that position. Like a husband and wife, they have their images. Each one has built an image about the other and holds on to that image. And any movement in that image is disturbing. And so on, so on. Right. So one sees the mechanism of building images. I wonder if we do. That is, let's take a very simple thing. You insult me. I react to it. And the very reaction to that insult is the beginning of that image. Right? But if I say to as you insult me, I want to see if what you're saying is true or false. If what you're saying, however insulting, may have a grain of truth in it, that's good enough. I examine that. The examination is not a reaction. I don't know. Huh? I don't, right?
It is a reaction to the insult.
Look, sir, you have insulted me. I react, naturally. You hit me, and naturally I react. I must react. But in that reaction, I want to find out if what you are saying has a grain of truth in it. You understand? What you say, you may put it wrong, you may insult me, but I may be the thing which you are accusing me of. So I look at it. In the looking at it, examining it, the insult doesn't take root. I don't know if so there is no creating of the image. physically you hit me. Physically you want to harm me. Physically you want to violate me. And first time I fight you, and all the rest of it, and I avoid you. If you keep on. This is all very simple, these matters. But what is important, it seems to me, is not to give soil to that insult. So that the insult doesn't take root, which begins the mechanism of creating images. Or the flattery. So that whether you flatter me or insult me, there is no image forming at all. Which is after all a very sane way of looking at life. Sane way of living. Now, from there let's proceed, if we are clear. So, the image is the observer. No? Whether it is the image of the tree or the cloud or the image of my wife or my friend or my boss or the bus driver, conductor, because I have contempt for such people or whatever it is. So is it possible not to form images at all? But only a state where I'm actually listening to you. You understand? When you insult me, I'm listening to you. When you flatter me, I'm listening to you. I don't translate the flattery into an image or the insult into an image. And so then the question then arises, if there is no image machinery at all, image making machinery, then what is the observer?
Can I just go back for a second? If somebody insults me, and I listen to him, and then I begin to see if I want to look if there's any grain of truth in what he says. Now, that will eventually involve self-analysis.
I can see that immediately, so if I'm sensitive enough. So look, the great deal is, we can't go into everything involved in it. I insist that I do something, because I feel that's right. And you prevent me from doing it. I, the observer, say, I must do this. Action. I don't know if you want to go into all this because it's a very complex thing, all this. I insist this is right and I must do it. And you prevent me from doing it. Because your vested interests prevent me from doing this. Either as a husband, wife, or a friend, or a boss, or whatever it is. And what takes place then? I have no image, you follow? That's very important to understand. I have no image when I say that this must be done. But you have an image. So, where there is on one side the image machinery active, on the other side image machinery is not active, then the relationship ceases. I don't know.
Yes.
So we're asking ourselves, what if the image is the observer? Please, this is not just the image, but the whole structure of image making. The memory, the experience, the knowledge, the reaction, the inherited, the whole machinery of that, which is actually the observer. And that observer says, I am watching the tree. The person whom I look, the woman, she's my wife. Because she has given me pleasure, sex, she has supported me, encouraged me, she has cooked for me, bore my children, and I have, as any, whole of that is the observer. And if there is no machinery that fabricates images, and that is very difficult to do, I can do it about a tree, it doesn't interfere with my daily existence. But when my wife says, look, you looked at that woman, or I insist this, I want to dominate you, I want this sexual response, and so on, so on, so on, day after day, day after day. You follow? And is it possible under all those circumstances? Please, this is married or the boss, the repetition of a nagging wife, or a demanding wife, or a possessive wife, or a dominating wife, or an indifferent wife, to be so either so completely alert, it passes through without bringing in indifference. I don't know, all this is involved in all this. It isn't just few tricks that one plays. And if this is so, if the machinery can come to an end, then where is the observer? And no, sir, this is very important. Where is the observer? But there is the tree, there is the wife, there is the bus conductor, there is the boss. I don't know. You know more than I do. And so on, so on. So, where then is the observer? If the observer is not, then there is only the observed. And if the observer is not, then what is the observed? Or what is the state of the human being who has no observer? I don't know if can we move away from that for the moment and tackle it from a different point of view? I observe the tree. The image I have about that tree is observing now. We've been through all that, and I have understood the image making, and it's no longer operative. So that stops. Then what has happened to the mind that was looking at that tree through the image? I don't know if you're following on. Then it's only watching. Then, because it has no image, it's capable of watching immensely. I don't know so. So the image, the making of the image is keeping the mind dull. Of course, it's very much easier to have an image about you and get on with it. But to have no image means tremendous awakened state. So there is only watching. I don't know if you.
So, in the awakened state, how can one avoid the feeling of memory almost instantly saying this is a different state?
So look, sir, let's go back into something, which is memory. Let's finish with it. You must have memory of certain facts, where you live, technical, in the field of technical knowledge, and so on, so on, so on. But why do you want a memory otherwise?
Pleasure.
Huh?
Pleasure.
With what?
Pleasure.
Wait a minute.
Why?
Yes, pleasure. That's all you want memory for.
So that you can communicate. How can you communicate with someone with...
Oh yes, I mean, no, please, we said that. Oh my goodness. We need memory for communication. We need memory for recognition. She's my wife. If I don't have memory about her, she'll kick me. And so on and on and on and on. So I must have memory, which we'll call in the field of technology, right? Where I live, recognition of my wife, the job, the boss, the knowledge which I have acquired in order to fulfill that job, and so on and on and on. All that, for that I must have memory. And why should I have memory for anything else? No, sir, don't agree to this, please. Don't see what is involved in it before we agree or disagree. That lady suggested, I need memory for pleasure.
That is nostalgia.
Huh?
That is nostalgia.
There is no day?
That is nostalgia.
Nostalgia. Nostalgia. No, sir. Look, sir. I've had a pleasure of my wife, sex. Or woman, whatever it is. And what takes place? The pleasure of that remains in my mind. I think about it. I dream about it. I chew about it. Chew it. Till the next moment. Right? And for that I need memory. Not need memory, that's what's taken place. Which means what?
To repeat the pleasure.
Which, go into it, sir.
I start thinking about it. Start recording what I've enjoyed and wanting to repeat it again.
Yes. Which is what? Go into it a little bit, sir. Look what is taking place.
We are thinking of the past that it happened.
What?
We are thinking of the past.
No, leave that. No, go into it, sir. Look, sir, let's be simple. The pleasure of sex. I'm not condemning sex or saying it's right or wrong. I mean, that would be stupid. Say it's right or wrong. There is the pleasure of sex. And I think about it. Why? Obviously pleasure. Hmm? Now, what do we mean by pleasure?
Agreeable sensation.
No, of course, I understand that, agreeable sensation, but go into it, sir. You have told me I'm an awfully nice chap. Hmm? I think about it. Hmm? Right? And I want to see you again. And you've insulted me. I think about it. I don't want to see you. So what has taken place there?
There's an image formation.
No, sir. No. Go a little deeper into it, sir. You will see what has taken place.
We don't like pain, so we decided to pursue
Yes.
pleasure.
And you want pleasure. And you want the continuity of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. Right? Now, what is the continuance of pleasure? Thinking. Right? I had that pleasure with that sexual pleasure, and I think about it. So the thinking about it is the giving to that pleasure continuity. Right? I don't know. Huh? Wait, sir, go into it. Thinking about that incident of pleasure yesterday gives it to that yesterday a continuity which I call pleasure. Or I've had pain yesterday and thinking about it gives a continuity to it. But I don't want to think about the pain, but I do want to think about the pleasure. Hmm? So thinking gives to that incident a continuity, right? And is it possible not to think about it? This sort.
Well, the only thing I've ever done is that when I've thought about it and created a larger and more sensational and seen that the pain goes along with it, I've decided, well, then you've got to stop or carry on.
No. So, may I take my coat off? So, don't mind? There's something more involved in it, sir. Let's begin. It is still we are dealing with the observer and the observed. Don't let's wander away from it, because it is this observer who has had the pleasure of something that happened yesterday, and by thinking about it, it has given it a continuity, and the observer says, I must have more. Thought is the observer. Of course, sir. And then I say to myself, what is the origin of thought? Because thought is always interfering, right? I've had that pleasure, I must have more of it. I've had pain, I must have less of it. So there's this thinking gives continuity to both. So both are together, they're not separate. I don't know if the pain and the pleasure are always together. If I want to avoid pain, I must also avoid pain. Pleasure. So I say to myself, by Jove, thought is responsible for this. I see a beautiful woman or a beautiful car, and the seeing is the creating of sensation, the desire, and then thought comes and says, by Jove, I'd like to have it. So, thought is the observer. And why does thought interfere? Why does thought project itself all the time? When I see a cow, I see a cow. So if thought is the observer, and as long as there is thought, there is the division between the observer and the observed, between the tree and myself, between the incident of yesterday which gave me pleasure and now there is the interval, which I want to repeat it again tomorrow. So, as long as there is an observer, there must be a space and a time interval. And hence the whole mechanism of conflict. I don't know if you've... So I have to find out the nature of thought, why it comes into, how it comes into being, and all the rest of it. And is it possible for thought to come to an end by itself, not another image putting an end to thought? I don't know if you're following all this. Is it getting too much or?
Please go on.
So then I have to find out the origin of thought, how thought begins. I need thought. You follow, sir? When I go to the office, when I talk, when I do certain action, there, as we said, in the technological field, which is the large part of our life, there I need thought. The more clear thinking, the more precise, the more direct, the simple, healthy, the better it is. But when thought brings a space between the observer and the observed, then the whole problem begins. I don't know if you're following all this. Then the whole problem of conflict, me and you, me, my country, and you, your country, my leader, my party, your party, So, what is the beginning of thought? And can thought see its own danger, not in the technological field, but in the rest of and say, come to an end by itself, without creating a super entity that says you must end it? I don't know if you're...
Thought is so continuous that it seems to be afraid of coming to an end.
No, if I see a danger, I don't say, well, I'll go on. When I see a precipice, I say, it is a precipice, I better get away from it. So let's finish this. What is the beginning of thought? How does thought arise?
One thought seems to come as a reaction to another thought. If one flatter one, instantly there's a remembrance of one saying you shouldn't accept what another said. And there's the...
Yes, sir, all that. But go a little deeper into it, further than that. That's obvious. But go a little further and say, how does thought begin at all?
Isn't it the residue of perceptions?
Yes, sir, we've said that. See, you don't... Those are obvious things. That is, you hit me and I respond. But that response is part of physical reaction, and also thought saying, what the devil did he hit me? I must hit back. You follow? And so on, so on, so on, so on. And that's not what we are trying to... We see that, that's obvious. But go still deeper and see the how thought begins rather than the origin.
I dream rather than move. I dream about moving. Thinking is to stay in the same position.
May I look at it, if I may suggest, differently. How do you discover anything?
Awareness.
Huh?
Awareness.
Awareness. What do you mean by awareness?
Of yourself.
Huh?
Self-awareness.
And also, what? Proceed with that word, awareness. What does it mean to be aware?
It's hard for me to describe it. When I feel that I am, my thoughts don't run along the same line that they usually do. Because I'm examining.
No, you see, I understand, sir. Look, sir, I look at you. I have no image of you. Because I don't know you, and you don't know me. And so for the moment, I have no image of you, but I look at you. Right? From what do I look at? That's one problem. Leave it for the moment. Have you looked at anything out of complete silence? The tree, the person, the wife, the boss, the bus driver, anything. Have you looked out of complete silence? Which means the mind is completely quiet, still, no image, but very awake, not, daydreaming or anything, which means out of silence it looks. Right? Then you discover something, don't you? Even in the most complicated scientific field, that must take place. You may have tremendous knowledge about that particular subject. But to go further, the mind must be completely awake and yet silent. No? This you haven't done. Now, I want to find out what is the beginning of thought. And to find that out, the whole process of thinking, the machinery that's chattering away incessantly must come to an end. That is, the mind must be completely still to find out. No? And the mind can't force itself to be quiet. Then it's a battle. So there must be some way of making the mind completely quiet. Not a drug, right? Not a system, not a process of mesmerizing oneself into quietness, which is merely an illusion. So one has to go back to a much more fundamental issue, which is, unless there is profound self-knowledge, mind cannot be quiet. I don't know if you follow all this. Unless I know myself completely, not parts, little bits, little fragments of it, the mind cannot be quiet. Obviously, it's self-explanatory by itself. What's the time?
12 months.
So we have now come to a conclusion, because when you say that before the mind can be quiet, we must knowledge of oneself.
That's not a conclusion.
No, sir. But if for the mind to be quiet, this is an essential part. But the mind, but the mind cannot be quiet. But there will be no self-knowledge without the mind being quiet, because we can't discover anything unless we have.
Obvious, sir.
So
I think it means it's a vicious circle.
yes.
I know, no. So I begin to know myself. Forget the quiet mind. I'm not interested. I'm not interested to find out what's the origin of thought. Somebody can tell me, but there's no value. But if I say, by Joe, it's only a very quiet, steady, still mind that can look. Look at a cloud, look at you, find out what the origin of thought is. Mind must be quiet, and it cannot be quiet till there is profound, about oneself. So I begin to find out about, so I watch myself. So I come back to the point, how I watch myself. Do I watch myself with an image, or do I just watch myself? You feel it? You see the whole thing, sir? I'm afraid we must stop. Madam, do we meet again?
Hello.
Do we meet again?
Yes, we're meeting next Tuesday.
Right. I think that's enough, don't you?